Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round, and I'm here to talk about The Strangers Chapter 1.
Why are you doing this to us? Because you're here.
Alright, so let's elephant in the room. This movie is a movie. I'm trying to think of, they say, like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Well, if I went by that, this whole review would just be me saying, this movie is a movie. It exists. It is called The Strangers Chapter 1. It's directed by Rennie Harlan, who brought us such classics as Exorcist the Beginning, Cutthroat Island, and Die Hard 2. Alright, let's get into it. So, contrary to what a lot of people think with the title, it is not a prequel to the original. I went into it not sure if it was going to be. The fact that it's set in modern times because they have smartphones and they're talking about Airbnbs. It's definitely a modern movie, so it's not set before the 2007 original where they had flip phones. It's a reboot, and it's apparently a trilogy, something I read on IMDb, but spoiler, the movie ends with a frickin' to be continued, like it thinks it's Back to the Future, except they did it as a joke. No, Rennie Harlan apparently shot an entire trilogy, back to back to back, Lord of the Rings style, and this is just part one. So, right off the bat, this movie is going full Exorcist believer, in that it's supposed to be the start of a trilogy, and it's really banking on people liking this first part, which I don't know that they will. I will say, at the very least, they already shot the other two movies. It's not like Exorcist where they're like, we're doing a trilogy, and then nobody liked it, and David Gordon Green stepped down, and then they're like, well, we don't know if it's going to be a trilogy. We kind of spent $400 million on the rights, and we need to do something with it. Hey, let's get Mike Flanagan. I'm actually kind of excited if he does an Exorcist movie, but I digress, which I often do. But so, The Strangers Chapter 1, it's pretty much just the first movie. You have the couple that goes to, they're staying at this house, except its whole first act is like the remake of Wrong Turn, where it's like, you have these here city folk in the country. They're in a small town in Oregon, which I know is not in the South, but whenever I do a country voice, I can't help but sound like Shooter from Secret Window, as played by John Turturro. You remember him? You stole my story. So, they, their car's broken, and then the townspeople are like, oh, yeah, there's a place you can stay that's on Airbnb. Of course, they call it, it's one of them internet houses. And then from there on, the couple, which is played by, I know Madeline Pesh was on Riverdale. That's the only thing I know her from. I don't know the other guy from anything. I apologize. But just same deal. The three masked people with the same masks from the original stalk them and try to kill them, whatever. The reason I say it's an inferior version to the first Strange movies, that first movie was very simplistic in its approach, but it was masterfully shot. It was so well directed. And yes, it relied on jump scares, but it was so perfectly, directed, paced, shot. Like, the jump scares worked, and it did such a good job of building tension. This movie does not do that. This movie feels like... It feels like the Walmart brand knockoff. This movie is called The Strangers Chapter 1, but it feels like one of those... Do you remember those mockbusters? See, I used to work in a video store, and when Transformers came out, there was Transmorphers, and when Snakes on a Plane came out, there was Snakes on a Train, like that. The Strangers Chapter 1 feels like, just the movie itself feels like one of those movies. And you've got a really good, like, you've got Richard Brake playing the sheriff of this small town, but he doesn't have any lines. He only pops up in, like, the opening scene. I assume they're saving him for later, but again, you're really banking on people liking this one for there to even be demand for the next two. Because what happens if this movie flops, nobody wants it, what do they do with the other two? Do they quietly drop them to streaming and pretend like they don't exist? And the whole time I'm thinking, okay, well, yeah, they're doing all the same beats, but maybe this will do what the other one wouldn't. Maybe there's going to be a part where the strangers unmask themselves, and it was those people from the town. Because earlier, like, the waitress is really nice and gives them a ride, and like I said, Richard Brake is there. He's the sheriff. And I think that to have done a reveal like that, like, oh, the people doing this, were those nice townspeople that helped us, I think that sends a terrifying message that, like, the killers could be among us. But it never does that. It wants to end on this bullshit cliffhanger. And for all I know, that reveal is planned later because they never, spoiler, they never reveal who the strangers are, just like they never did in the original. And maybe they're planning a reveal later, but again, you're banking on people liking this one. It was like, you can do a trilogy all you want, but then release it as a 3-part miniseries, or announce all 3 of them back to back to back or whatever. Like, it just, when you do a first movie and it feels like that first movie is more interested in setting up the next one, I mean, you're doing the Dark Universe all over again. So between that and then just between its very generic everything, it's laughable. Like you have these chase scenes, and then, like, the characters are running, and then there's way too much time in between them running here and then running here, and it's like, what are they even doing? And then they copy the same beats as the original, where, like, the guy accidentally kills someone who wasn't one of the bad guys. And it's like, if you're gonna do a reboot, do it differently enough that it justifies his own existence. Because aside from, again, the bullshit, setting up a trilogy, I just go watch the first movie and get the same exact plot. Granted, The Strangers Prey at Night was not exactly groundbreaking in its plot, but it was at least very stylistically directed and shot. It had such a cool, like, neon color palette, and it used, like, music. It's like, it did enough from a style perspective that it was a fun, interesting watch that took the concept of the original and did something new and different with it. This is just a cheap imitation of the original, and I can't believe we're getting 2 more of them. And frankly, the only reason I'm going to watch them is so I can rant and review about them on this channel. But hey, these are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up stuck in a terrible reboot that's just a cheap imitation of the first. And as always, every day is Halloween.